Hey there, boys and girls. Jim here once again. It is that time. It is finally time to sit down and do a non-guest blade video. And a video on a new knife that I just got that I'm really quite excited about. For those of you that follow me on Facebook and on Instagram, you guys have seen this knife a lot over the past 2 weeks since I got it. And I can't stop carrying the friggin' thing. It's one of those knives that once you've got it in your hand, you don't want to carry anything else. Not only because it's a great knife, but it's made by a great guy. This is a Jim Burke D.M.W, which stands for Dead Man Walking. Which, for right off the bat, I mean, it's just got a cool-ass name right off the bat. You can't beat that. What this basically is, it's a melding of three of Jim's original designs. The POA, the Fugitive, and the Villain. Now, once I open this thing up and we start getting into it, the first reaction you're going to have is, holy crap, that's a big knife. It's actually not a big knife by Jim's standards. He's known for doing really, really big, brutal kind of knives. And I look at this as being much more of an EDC style knife from him, because look how slim this knife gets. And don't worry, I'm going to give you some size comparisons in a minute in case this isn't doing you any good. But so you've got a nice wide design that's very slim and easy to carry in the pocket, and it's not really overly heavy. Now, this is actually a special knife for a lot of reasons. There are a couple of firsts on this knife for Jim, and I'm pretty excited about it. Quick little backstory. I've been on Jim's list for quite a long time, waiting for this and for a Villain. And I think my Villain is up in the next 2 or 3 months. I think he's going to be ready to start working on that. But he kind of told me about this model last year. I was intrigued by it. He was kind of cryptic about it. He didn't really say a hell of a lot, but I'm like, well, since nobody else knows about it, then that means you don't have a list. I'll take one. And this is, sight unseen. And I'm really glad that I did. For those of you that hang out on Jim's Facebook page, either at his Burke Knives page or his personal Facebook page, you saw the work in progress on this. And when it was finished, it was actually like a dark brown. It was a dark bronze anodize. And when he and I started talking after it was completed, I was kind of like, I kind of would really like to have royal blue. And he's like, hell yeah, let me just take the whole knife apart again. I felt horrible about that, but he was so accommodating. He's like, yeah, let me just tear the knife down again. I'll refinish it and get you into the royal blue that you want. And he created such an incredible blue out of this. This is one of the first three of the DMWs, I believe, that he's made. I know he made a really super fancy one with a fancy inlay. He did mine and another one at the exact same time. The other one has like these very cool lines or grooves going through it. And I just saw it pop up at Steel Addiction. I mean, if you catch this on the day I uploaded it, you could grab it. If you're watching this, a month or a year later, sorry, but it is over there. So let's take a good look at the knife and talk about why it's special. First, we'll start with just a quick HD look at the awesomeness that is this blade. It's just under 4 inches. It's just about 3 3/4 inches from the frame to the tip. A lot of cutting surface on that blade. Nice big recurve here. One of the things that Jim is really known for is his amazingly complex, sometimes mind-boggling grinds that he does. They almost defy logic in some ways. And this isn't quite as extreme as some of his, but I love the extreme way that he's ground this. And there's a special finish on it we'll talk about in a moment. Super crazy short clip on here. You'll notice the custom pivot, which is kind of like a spike. Really, really well done. And this diamond pattern that he's carved out really plays with the light in amazing ways. This knife is gorgeous in the natural light, in the sunlight. You'll actually see hues of purple coming through, even though it is strictly one uniform color of blue. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. One of the cool things about it is, and I think you can actually see it in there if I can get the camera to focus, but he's using a ceramic ball detent to keep this action as smooth as humanly possible. And he did something that he normally is against. This is his very first model of knife ever to have a bearing pivot. He's using cage bearings. He's always been against bearings. And a lot of the more traditional knife makers that you talk to, some of the old school guys like Neil Blackwood, I've talked to Neil about this a few times too, and Neil hates bearings. He says he will never use bearings. And Jim was kind of that mindset too, but I honestly think it's because so many people have begged and pleaded, please make a flipper with bearings. Now Jim can create a flipper on washers that'll flip every bit as good as a knife on bearings, but some people just like to have bearings in their knife for whatever reason. And now, for a lot of times I've been like that, but now that I've handled enough knives, enough really good quality flippers that were on washers, that were tuned properly, you really don't need bearings to create a fast and smooth flipper, but it is a nice assisted way of doing that, absolutely. He's used a special media in the blasting of these grinds. And I apologize, but I don't recall. He told me on the phone, and I wasn't keeping notes, unfortunately. And he said it was either a media that has not been used by other makers or is very infrequently used by other makers. And it gives this a very different sheen. It's a very smooth surface, and it gives it a different coloration. It comes out in this really, really dark gray. It's not as light as you would see typical stone washing done. It's a really, really cool look, and it's very pronounced there in the fuller as well. Really cool groove running through the middle of there, very deep, and it gives you an idea of how chunky this blade really is. Now, you might be wondering about the blade, so I'm going to talk about this a little bit, because what Jim likes to use is a steel called PSF 27. It's kind of a form of D2. It's basically a type of D2 steel. It's made by Crucible, but it's a finer grain that's more consistent, that's supposed to yield better wear resistance, better crack resistance, and greater hardness. You can go up to about 62 Rockwell hardness on this, but they typically stay between 59 and 62, somewhere in there, most makers that work with it. And what they're doing, what Crucible's doing, is they're making it by spray forming. So the steel is actually melted and then sprayed to form the billet, instead of doing any kind of casting. So what they say is that allows for a much more uniform makeup of the steel throughout the entire bar of steel. So I think that's pretty interesting that they're able to get D2 properties and kind of enhance them a bit and give them a little more of what you want. You know, the wear resistance is obviously a very, very big deal, especially for somebody like Jim Burke, who creates knives that are really meant to be used, not just sit on a shelf or sit in a display case. They're really meant to be used. I mean, look at that edge. So you want to have that edge hold as long as it possibly can. And, you know, it's not, I don't think it's anywhere near the price of the exotic steels like S110 and S90. I think it may be somewhat comparable to 3V as far as cost goes, but I'm not entirely certain on that. But it's not one of the ridiculously crazy steels, but it's also not an inexpensive steel either. It's not a stainless steel, although it is very, very close to a stainless steel. So you are going to want to take good care of it, just like you would any carbon steel blade that you might have. So, you know, like I use the Aegis EDC knife care solution. I swear by it. I live by it. I think it's the greatest stuff on earth. I used to use a tough cloth, couldn't stand the smell, couldn't stand the crap on my hands. And the fact that you just had to keep using it over and over and over, the EDC solution is just 10 times easier to work with. You know, Jim is known for a few things. He's known for big, freaking, massive folding knives. I mean, look at his villain, for example. I mentioned before, he's known for his mind-boggling kind of grinds and for making a fully usable blade with extremely sharp edges. You guys know I'm a big fan of sharp. I mean, I love my Rocksteads. There's certain knives that I buy because I know it's got great steel, great edge, and great edge retention capabilities. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to get a Burke knife. And, go look at he doesn't do a lot of videos, but he does have videos up on his YouTube channel. And go look at the stuff he's done, the hanging rope cut and all that kind of good stuff. He stabbed these things, not this one, but other knives, into friggin' steel barrels and shit, just to show that he makes his knives to be used, period. Another thing he's known for is making really, really cool custom hardware. Like here on the pivot, I've got kind of this spike shape. He does stuff with these really cool crosses and things like that. The guy can make pretty much anything. He is one of the best machinists that I've ever seen. He's also considered to be a master of his craft by collectors and by his fellow makers. He is really, really highly regarded by other knife makers. And, it's nice to see that level of appreciation for somebody that, listen, he may not be a household name to the general average everyday guy. Most premium knife collectors do know who he is and or have one of his knives, but he's not, it's not like saying Rick Hinderer or Todd Begg at this point, where, the masses can kind of, recognize that name. And I love the fact that everybody says the same thing about Jim. He makes incredible quality. Yeah, I mean, his stuff is not inexpensive. Don't think that I'm saying, here's a relatively new, undiscovered gem. No, I mean, he's established. Everybody that needs to know who he is knows who he is. And he puts a lot of time and handwork into every knife. So you're going to pay that premium. This is not a $500, $800, $900 knife. They're all well over $1,000 in the D.M.W. And you can get crazy. You can get $2,000 and more. You start getting, Timascus inlays and things like that. Go look at his Facebook page. He did one that was unbelievably beautiful. But he's got the level of precision to command that price. And when you get his knife, you don't balk. You go, I understand what I just paid for here completely. And the other cool thing about Jim is he is incredibly humble. As we were talking about this knife and other stuff, I'm telling you, I said, you're making really great stuff. I'm really amazed at this knife. It's fantastic. And, he's kind of got that aw shucks attitude. He really doesn't see himself being as great as he really is. And I think it may even kind of embarrass him a little bit if you really kind of go overboard with it. But, he makes a knife that works right, is extraordinarily sharp, does what it needs to do. And he's created, and this is not even broken in yet, a wonderfully smooth knife. Some of the neat little details I'm going to get into in a minute, but I do want to give you that size comparison that I promised. So we'll put it up next to some relatively large knives. You guys know I almost always use my Bodega for size comparisons. That's a 3 3/4 inch blade. So they are virtually identical in size. Now you realize, yeah, it's a big knife, but it's not as big as I thought it was. It's not as big as the other knives I've seen him do. But notice again, that taller profile, both in the blade and in the handles, to fill your hand a little bit more. Put it up next to my Hoback Quebec, another favorite of mine. And you see the Quebec's a teeny touch, just a little bit longer, but again, it's slimmer than the Burke. Break out one that we know is a tank, one that we know is thick and broad, but it's quite a bit shorter. Our good buddy Jeff Tough Thumbs, the Tough Knives Tough Tannic, still one of my hands-down favorite knives I will ever own in my entire life. And while this starts to get, a little bit comparable in the broadness of the size, the Tannic is much more compact. So let's get that out of there. And we'll go to something I think is going to be a little closer. Here is the Olamic Wayfarer. Wayfarer is a little bit longer. Now again, that is a 4-inch blade. But you take a look at the handles, and the handles are almost identical. So he is giving you a little more handle length for the size of the blade. So let's get some of these guys out of here and look at some of the finer details. I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you've ever prayed or hoped to get a Burke, You need to sign on to his books now. I know he's over a year wait, but it's so well worth it. And wouldn't you rather wait a year and 3 months than 2 years or 3 years or hear, sorry, my books are closed? Get in now while you're able to. All right, so first off, it's a unique shape to the flipper. And there's a couple of different ways that you can flip it. And that's why I wanted to wait a week or two with carrying this before I did the video. You can do your standard thing of just pushing from the front and pushing back. Okay, that's going to be fine. But this is really the way he's done the jimping here on the flipper tab. It's going to work really well for push buttoning, or you can actually kind of pull at it from the back of the tab. And I've never had a knife I could do that with. Just by way of comparison, there's no way to do that with a Bodega. I don't think I could do it with my Wayfarer. He's got, yeah, it's completely smooth there too. Can't really lean. Yeah, I guess I can lean on the back a little bit and get it open. But this, it's nice and grippy. He starts at the very top, so you can light switch it, or you can kind of grab it from the back. I mean, you can even be kind of half-assing it, and your finger is still going to come in contact with it. I tend to like to preload this one a little bit and give it a little light switch action. Now, it's not completely broken in yet, but he's got a wonderful smooth action to it. The lockup is fantastic. There we go. Get a nice view in there. There we are. So kind of take it out of view for a second so I can see it. About 15% lockup, I'd say. Pretty close to that. Now, even though the titanium frame's been done slim, it's still very, very sturdy. I don't feel like I'm really overextending that at all. I love this backspacer. And this kind of keeps that really futuristic, or at least very modern look to the overall knife. It's a nice clean look, nice gear pattern, but flush gear pattern, which is my favorite actually. I don't like a raised gear pattern on my backspacers. Like when Ramon Chavez made my knife, he was doing some gear backspacer. I said, yeah, make mine gear, but make it flush. I like that look. And it's still got just enough feeling back there if I'm holding a reverse handhold that my the pad of my thumb can drop in. Nice clean look. A feature that I love is a really, really big lanyard opening. I could put I've been using a lanyard on this since I got it. I don't have to use a piece of thread or fishing line to bring the end of it through, to bring the loop through or nothing. I can just fold the loop in half, bend it through, and pop it right through and just cross it over. Nice and simple. So I've got a lanyard that I could take on and off really, really quickly if I want to. I don't have to tie a lanyard specifically onto the knife. You can put pretty much anything you want back there. No, a lot of room for that. Overall, the fit and finish is absolute perfection. I mean, this thing is flawless from the word go. Every bit of detail, all of the anodizing, the finishing, nothing is uneven. This is a premium level knife with premium level quality throughout. This is not a maker that puts unrealistic prices on his knives and you get it and go, well, it's nice, but it would have been nice for $300 or $400 or $500 less. I don't think I got my money's worth. I don't think whenever you see the JB Diamond on a knife, I don't think that you could ever say, well, it's nice, but it doesn't live up to the price tag. I think it's fantastic. Here is the centering. The jimping on it is perfect. It's not too sharp where it becomes cumbersome, but it's certainly not dull. It grabs onto your thumb very, very nicely. The way this fits in my hand, I love the feeling of it. Nice deep choil in here. And again, being that slimmer size, it really drops into the hand nicely. You don't have to have big monster paws in order to handle and carry this knife. So all I could say is this, I am beyond impressed on this knife. It was very, very well worth the wait. Now I'm really anticipating my villain. And the villain we're doing is sweet. It's going to be all blue anode. Again, blue anode, kind of funny. Titanium, we're going to have a big inlay of zirconium in it. He's going to do a beautiful blade finish on it for me. But at this point, I actually sent him a message tonight, and he was asking me again. He's like, so do you still like the knife? I'm like, oh, God, yeah, I friggin' love it, and I can't stop carrying it. At this point, now I know after my villain gets done, I want to get another one of the DMWs, and I actually want to go fancier. I think I want to just lay down the big bucks, and maybe do a Damascus blade or do the Timascus inlays or something really fancy, because I have forsaken so much of the rest of my collection since this arrived. This is a hard user. The second day I had it, I had a whole ton of crap to tear down in my garage to clean out my garage. This probably cut down 40 or 45 cardboard boxes, a few of the, those plastic straps that are on a lot of the boxes and whatnot. And there's not even a friggin' mark on the blade. I mean, I cleaned it, obviously, but there's no detection that it's been dulled at all. There's no buildup on the blade. This finish, whatever he's done here, is extremely mar resistant. And that's why I wanted the knife. I wanted it for a user. I wanted to beat the living shit out of it. And that's exactly what it's allowing me to do. By the way, the tip of this is scary sharp. I actually can't take this to work anymore because I actually damaged 3 watches during one show because of this tip. So when I tell you he makes an insane blade, I ain't lying to you. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here for now. Check out his website over at burkeknives.com. Check out his Facebook page. If there's a way possible to get on his books, you need to do it. Even if you're a little bit unsure, you're going to have a year to a year and a half or 2 years to finish making up your mind. And when you start seeing the other examples of what he's making, trust me, your mind is going to be made up. I'm out of here for now. I got a few more videos to do soon, and I will try to get them out as quickly as I can. Thank you, guys.